the special agenda joint meeting with the Marijuana Working Group to order on December 12th at 4:10. Would you please join me in a pledge to the flag?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's great to see everyone in attendance, and I'm hoping that changing the time and the dynamic of this working group is helping us achieve this goal. It's wonderful. Will the clerk please read our first item?
Consideration of providing staff direction on the proposed commercial cannabis work plan.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Madam Chair, excuse us, we're a little crammed in here with the projector. We had a little malfunction here. So my name is David Gonzalez. For everybody's benefit, I am the Community Resource Agency Director. Before you have Dan Van Essen, Neil, and Valerie from SCI are also here to help answer any questions that you may need to answer. So first off, I'm going to start off by making sure that we stay on focus, on point today for the public and for everybody to recall. We are here to talk about commercial. We've had previous discussions about personal and medical use. We're here to talk about whether we're going to move forward with discussions on commercial. We'll break this up into different parts. I'll be doing the overview. Dan will cover some details regarding the PowerPoint, and we'll have some availability of our consultants for the professional expertise that the board may wish to answer any questions from. I want to start out by trying to remain focused on the areas that Dan's going to present here. My particular department, for those that may not know, has many responsibilities. This is just one of those. My goal today is to get very clear direction when we get to the board decision on, first off, whether we're going to be having this discussion, and then at what points and what timelines does the board expect to have these discussions if we're going to have them move forward. I will express the resources that we'll need for those. It'll be my job and the CAO's job to bring back something that will work before the board. So the audience knows and understands this is the combination group, and I want to make sure that they understand that the board will be making those final decisions for me, and I apologize, Madam Chair, just for their benefit. So at this point, what you'll see is a transition more heavily from the personal side, where Mr. Van Essen and myself handled 90% of that. You'll see a transition for most of these expertise and outreach and those types of things being handled by the consultant, and it is very important that I listen extremely well to you, the board, to try to make sure that I get very clear direction so I can give you the resources to accomplish what you will be asking for. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Daniel, and we'll be doing some back and forth here in this PowerPoint and trying to make sure we answer and set the groundwork for where we're headed. Daniel? Okay. I'll take these first part. As the board reminded us and the working group, we had priorities, and everything we're going to be talking about will center around these priorities. The community health and safety, first and foremost. The policy is consistent with the county's mission and values and statements, and they're on the board for those that do not know what those are in the back. It's for all citizens to enjoy our beautiful community. The minimal impact to time and resources to our departments. That may not be realistic, but we will do our best to try to explain what the impacts are. Explore the positive economic benefits to the community. Ensure to the best of our ability we have no nuisance to our neighbors. That the project that we're working on here, discussions about commercial cannabis, is revenue neutral to the county, or in the positive aspect. We do not affect existing services that we provide to the whole county. Try to minimize the impact to other land uses, which is no different than any other use that my office tries to do that with. Safe access for any users to partake in this particular venture. Protection for the environment. Again, the same tenets we preserve on any other projects that we're working on. And that the regulations that are produced are easy to understand, enforceable, and the public and staff can clearly delineate what the expectations of both the public are. That's it. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Daniel.
Thank you, David. My name is Dan Van Essen, and I'm a land use planner for Tuolumne County. I wanted to provide some background on where we've been with this. On September 11, 2017, the Marijuana Working Group met to develop a Marijuana Working Group work plan to facilitate education and discussion on the topic of commercial cannabis. The Marijuana Working Group determined that any work plan needs to investigate the three broad topics of cultivation, retail, manufacturing, and within each of these topics, we need to delve into the subtopics that apply to each, such as distribution, testing, enforcement, fees, taxing, and banking, public education and communication, administrative policies, and medical versus non-medical, and responsibility of regulatory oversight. On October 3rd, 2017, we met for a Board of Supervisors meeting to discuss the Marijuana Working Group's proposed work plan. During the discussion, the Board of Supervisors determined that taxes should be discussed prior to any other topic due to its time sensitivity. And based upon this discussion, we added taxes to the proposed work plan as a main topic. And we could get more into the details with that. We do have SCI to discuss some timelines that they've dealt with other counties and what that is looking like going forward. Neil?
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, Supervisors. Neil Hall, SCI Consulting Group. We are we're working with several cities and counties at this point on various aspects of cannabis implementation, and I'm pleased to be here again in Tuolumne County in Sonora. I wanted to talk just briefly about some of the community outreach we're doing because we find that this is really the basis for everything moving forward, that if you don't do the proper outreach, number one, you don't get the feedback and the information you need from the residents of the communities. And number two, that they don't understand a lot of times what is happening with their communities in terms of cannabis implementation. The steps that we typically take are to hold a combination of stakeholder meetings and public education. With the stakeholder meetings, we try and bring in people from the school system, from law enforcement, Chamber of Commerce. We try and bring in as many people that will be affected by this in the community as possible. We open it up to the public so that the public can participate in that stakeholder meeting. But the main part of the stakeholder meeting is to, and as part of the stakeholder group, we also include industry participants so that their point of view can be heard as well. But the public, although they're invited to that, has very little input in the stakeholder meeting. Primarily, we're looking at the concerns and the considerations of those people that will be directly affected in the commercial part of the industry itself. We then follow that usually with a public education meeting that goes through the status of cannabis federally and at the state level and locally as well. We try and do, if we can, we did them in Shasta Lake, we did them in the city of Merced, we did them in the county of San Luis Obispo. Two of those meetings per visit. So in other words, we would try and have the stakeholder group meeting perhaps from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and then from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock have the public education meeting. And that public education can take place as part of a regularly scheduled community meeting, or it can be a separate meeting. But it is extremely important that everybody be educated about this. We found that that's really lacking in a lot of cases. Those outreach meetings and the time of them need to be decided by you all, whether we hold them in each of the districts, whether we hold them in each of the communities, or we just hold a couple of them, is up to you. You know your area here a lot better than we do. We just want to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to learn everything that is going on around them. And with that said, I think I turn this back over to Daniel.
So, along with the public outreach, the Marijuana Working Group on September 11th expressed great interest in additional educational opportunities, and to incorporate these opportunities within the work plan to learn more about commercial cannabis and the impacts that this potential, the impacts that it could have. Some of these educational opportunities include site visits to commercial cultivation, retail, and manufacturing locations, providing different providing different examples of success and failures in terms of case studies, doing different presentations from licensed dispensary operators, engagement with the City of Sonora, education on substance abuse and addictions, presentations from schools on potential impacts to the students this may have, and presentations related to the 4 subjects and their subtopics from groups such as law enforcement, code compliance, and affected county departments and divisions. With this, we'd like to bring forth a recommended timeline. Obviously, this may change with with how we approach the public outreach phase. We schedule this around the special meetings that your board has set aside on the Tuesdays, the second Tuesdays of each month. Please do note that the tax discussion, we've talked to SCI a little bit, and they recommend that we maybe even act sooner on this than we have listed. And so that's something to consider. But basically what we've recommended is to maintain at least 2 meetings at a minimum for the discussion and then the decision on the topic. It is recommended that your board determine if it would like to proceed with discussion on commercial activities. It's recommended that your board determine its interest in including an advisory ballot measure on the June ballot regarding the public's opinion of taxing local commercial cannabis activities, and instruct staff to begin developing language for an advisory ballot. It's recommended that your board provide direction to staff on the proposed topics, priorities, and subsequent schedule with any modifications. And lastly, it's recommended that your board provide direction to staff as to the level of public outreach to be conducted through community outreach meetings or other forms of outreach. Thank you. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Okay, so for this group up here, just a brief recap. This was the conversation that came out of the last marijuana, not the joint meeting, but with just myself, Supervisor Royce, Mr. Klemp, Kira, and Jerry. And so and then at the next Board of Supervisors meeting, if you'll recall, we found that the time delays were quite significant because we kept going back and forth, and that's when we conceptually said we need to start having joint meetings. So a couple of questions, and after we go through the process of getting to ask all of our questions and getting input from the public, then we will come back to the board, the 5 board members, to give specific direction to staff. And so I want to go through these one at a time with this group up here jointly. And the first question at the top of this list is, we need to determine if we would like to proceed with the discussion on commercial activities. And I'd like to know if, so first of all, I'd like to ask if there's any questions on that topic for staff or conversation.
Bashful wants to get started here.
Yes.
Could I start somewhere else first?
That depends, John.
Because I have a question, and it's our first date to meet, and it has to do with the tax discussion. And do we have to have a ballot, advisory ballot, in order to impose a tax?
No.
Okay. And the tax that we would propose, is it a general sales tax, or is it a tax specifically for the consumption or sale of marijuana?
Okay, so I want you to be able to answer that.
I need to have that
And you
answered,
will.
if you would. And then I'll
Okay, John,
start the
that
rest of the
answer, and then
conversation.
I'm going to come back to my original point.
I will help you with it.
Before we can address what you want to address, Sherry, there's some questions I got to have answered.
Absolutely, and these are the same questions, and that's absolutely.
Okay, so you're,
But if we
you're
go-
trying to structure us out of a discussion here.
No, I'm not. I'm really not. Go ahead, John.
Okay. Question, I believe, was that is it a tax that can be specifically towards marijuana, or is it a general, like a general sales tax, where we'd have to give a portion of that tax to the state?
No, this would be specifically on marijuana. It would come specifically back to Tuolumne County. Whether it would be general or special is up to the board, but the tax would be levied on those participating in the marijuana industry.
Okay. And I apologize, Madam Chair, for opening this up, but I'm sure there's some other questions.
There's going to be a lot of questions because absolutely these questions have to be addressed. But what we've continued to talk about and go in circles is, are we going to ask staff to expend the resources to go down this path? And so I appreciate the other three supervisors really needing this information. This is information that Evan and I have been going in circles on for 6 months. And so I'm going to take a step back, and I was hoping to go at this kind of issue by issue so that we stayed focused on one topic at a time. But I understand what you're saying. You need to hear some of the conversation that this working group has been having for the last 6 months in order for you, I guess.
So let me ask you a question, just a clarification. Do you want a simple yes or no on whether we want to investigate the possibility of doing commercial marijuana? Is that what your first item is?
I am looking for a simple answer, yes or
Okay.
no, because
I think I don't know enough to say no. So in my mind, if all you want to know is if we want to do the investigation of whether we want to pursue it or not, my answer is going to be yes. I thought that was, maybe I'm ignorant, but I thought that was sort of a foregone conclusion and that we needed to figure out how we were going to look at that. Not that the answer to whether we're going to do it is yes or no, but are we going to investigate it, yes or no? I don't know enough to say blanket no.
no, that you hit on it is, are we going to investigate it? Are we going to
I don't,
invest the resources and investigate it?
okay. I know enough to answer that question.
I know enough to answer that question also.
See the question.
Here's the question.
So to clarify for Supervisor Handel, if the answer to that question on this board is no, then we can adjourn the meeting and we can go home, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I am looking for some consensus that we want to move this conversation forward. And I'm sensing that the answer is yes. Okay?
And this is a board level discussion at this point, right?
Madam
Yes.
Chair, my problem is, look, I've got more education on this in the last year than I ever thought I would get, and I continue to get it, and I get mixed signals, and I get a lot of conversation with constituents. Actually, most of them are for no commercialization, but I think we need to be responsible and make sure that we make an informed decision. I don't like to do things just, no or no action is always an option, but it needs to be an informed action. So I still would like a little more information on some of these topics to make the firm decision. And I want the risk analysis, which I said before. What are the risks in every one of these things to the people of Tuolumne County? And unless we understand those, there's a risk of making a no decision. So let's go do it.
I agree with that. All right. So I'm going to move on to number 2, which I think gets at a broader conversation about what John's question was with determining if the interest in including an advisory ballot measure on the June ballot regarding the public's opinion taxing local commercial cannabis. Yes.
Yeah, can we talk about, can you put that slide back up that has the structure on it? I think it's, okay, there you go. I'll take that one. I'd like to know what informed that approach, because here's why I come from it, okay? The tax discussion I kind of get, and decision I kind of get, because we've got a ballot initiative, timing, all of that stuff. We got to deal with that. But all the other stuff, depending on how you do it, can be interwoven, okay? For instance, a decision that could be made, and I'm not advocating this, but a decision that could be made is that we're going to encourage vertically integrated operations, as an example. And a vertically integrated operation, for those in the public that don't understand that term, is somebody that does cultivation, manufacturing, and retail, or maybe 2 of the 3. So there would be some interrelationship in the discussion. So just dealing with retail and then closing that off and then dealing with manufacturing and then dealing with cultivation doesn't necessarily get you the stream of consciousness that you might want in that discussion. Similarly, how you're going to do that is also going to affect your tax decisions. So, I don't particularly like necessarily slicing and dicing it that way. I'm not going to say I wouldn't go along with it, but I don't think that that's the way that's going to get, if we're going to do commercial, and again, to me, that's a big if. I don't want anybody thinking that I'm up here advocating one way or the other, but if we're going to do it, I think we need to talk about the different approaches. This is one approach. This may be the approach that we choose to take, but by just putting that up there, we're foreclosing other approaches that we could take in terms of looking at this problem. And really, for me, the decision ultimately is going to come down because we are, no matter what we do, we're going to have negative consequences, okay? If we ban all commercial activity in the county, that will bring with it some negative consequences. It will have some positive consequences. If we do ollie oxen free, that's going to have some negative consequences. It will have probably not as many positive consequences, but it may have some positive consequences. But ultimately, the decision for me, is going to be balancing those negative and positive consequences, okay? And so if we go in this direction, we may not explore some approaches that would minimize the negatives and maximize the positives. And we might not get to the right answer. So that's my concern. I kind of look at this as an elephant, and I got to eat the elephant, okay? I can't digest that whole thing in one gulp. I've got to figure out how to dice this thing up into bite-sized pieces. And so this is an approach, but I see some problems in going down that path. You get where I'm at, David? I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, so we ran all those back and forth in those scenarios, and so to answer your question specifically, we understand they're all interwoven. The reason why, and you alluded to it, the reason why taxes is first is if you want to explore that, that's now. And if we are going to preclude those taxes in this next grow season, then that's fine, but that you can move that around if you do that, right? And so the reason for the other topics was simply getting your mind around it. There are, if you look at the previous slide, go back one, please.
That's what I would.
Every, two more? Where's,
On
one more.
page 2.
There we go. They're all, every one of these, and the reason why they're all up top and they're all connected. And we agree with you. In dividing that up, you can take it by small grows, large grows, medium grows. You can talk about size of retail. You can talk about size of manufacturing, fully integrated types of things. But for us, the mindset of separating out the discussion points for folks to absorb those topics and then circle back,
Okay.
that was the thought process. Because what we didn't put in here was, okay, you've got all the decisions. Now you got to come back and summarize, is this what we heard? Did the information about cultivation at the last part change your mindset about the retail?
Okay.
So that was the thought process, and try to lay out something as simple as we possibly could.
And
Yeah.
I appreciate, Supervisor, your comments, because, again, this is something that the working group has been grappling with, but this is the opportunity to articulate how we got here, and this is certainly now, it's how do we refine it to something that we can give to staff as very clear direction.
Well, you have me at a disadvantage because I don't have a better idea.
Madam Chair,
Kira?
I may have a better idea, maybe. I am wondering if we could have these discussions one after another, 4 consecutive meetings, and then round it back up for vertical integration discussion, any kind of interwoven discussions, and then make decisions taking in the total body of information. That way, it's all collected together and not like, here's cultivation, now we make a decision, and then we get to retail and like, oh, this affects cultivation, so now I got to go back and change our decision, perhaps.
I'll respond. We thought about that. Look at the timeline. If you can remember what you did in January, God bless you. That's a joke. It's difficult. You have more expertise in this area. And so I'm trying to look at the group, the public, and everybody and trying to eat the elephant one bite at a time, to use Supervisor Rutherford's statement, and try to keep people with a context and an understanding. Doesn't mean that decision regarding taxes or, well, retail will remain, but at least we've come to a conclusion. We've finished this subject matter, quote unquote, and we moved on. What we saw, if everybody recalls, is we loop back and we loop back and we loop back. My mindset on this was just try to finish the discussion subject and move on, and then when you're done, when you got the whole thing in front of you, decide if that process, everything still holds. And that's the summary coming back and one very large discussion about, is this what we heard? Is this still hold true? Summarize the discussions back and try to see if that's the summary. And so that was a reason, Kira, but it doesn't mean that we can't go a different direction. We
So-
did think about it.
I'm
So-
curious to hear from the board about that.
Yeah, so where are the other dimensions to this? Okay. We've got do we do A, B, or C? Okay. But there's several dimensions to that besides those. I mean, there's dimensions like how much of it, what's the scale of it. I mean, there's large cultivation, there's medium cultivation. The state has different levels, but there's all those other dimensions. Where do those decision factors get weighed in?
So we obviously tried to be mindful of the consultant's time and ours and tried to block these into one meetings and decision points. That was a little bit optimistic, to say the least. We all know how complex this is. Just take, for instance, your example about cultivation. Just what we saw as staff and what we've been talking about the consultants about, that's a very complex discussion point. And they'll be within those breakdowns will be, the
Okay.
mindset was in each one of those. And my thought is they'll probably expand, quite honestly. It was hopeful we could try to condense and having the outreach as a separate component, but those are extremely aggressive to try to accomplish. You've struggled with just what we've talked about before, but it was our point was to try to break them down in each individual section.
Jerry?
A couple of things. First off, I think, nobody's ever said they couldn't hear me before. I think that I'm a fan of the process. We went through it and spent a lot of time coming into it. I think that the point that Kira makes is a good one, but I think the approach is maybe it's kind of like when the House comes up with a bill and the Senate comes up with a bill, and then you got to reconcile it. Right? So I think there needs to be a final, after 814, a process that says this is the reconciliation process, because in fact, what's decided on the retail discussion back in May or April won't necessarily be, so you're going to have a reconciliation process. And it doesn't really matter whether we go horizontally or vertically. At some point in time, you're going to have to go back and make the circle back again. So it seems to me if you put a spot at the end that says this is where we reconcile and make sure all these decisions are in fact coherent with one another, I think that would help. The second thing is that as I recall the meeting, there seemed to be that we spent a lot more time saying, cultivation is something that's probably the highest energy activity out of all of these. Pushing it to the end feels wrong to me. Manufacturing might be more likely to be at the end, maybe the retail's in the middle, I don't know, but I think the sequencing of this is not quite in keeping with the meeting of that day. Of course, the tax thing came up afterwards, but I would argue that because there's so much energy around cultivation, that we'd be better off getting ourselves set on that first. If we decided that we're not going to do cultivation in Tuolumne County, I think it changes the whole game, right? If we decide that we are going to do we could still make the decision to do retail or not do retail and all of those kind of things, but so much of it's driven around cultivation, and I see the manufacturing thing being something that's going to take a long time to see fruition anyway. So I would question the order in here, and I would also like to see a reconciliation process at the bottom of it.
Okay, I'm going to go to Evan next.
I agree with what Jerry's saying, and I think it makes sense. You have to have a critical path, and there's trigger points in your decision-making as you move ahead. And I believe at the end, you do have to make sure that it all consolidates and is reconciled together. I think another strategy to deal with this is to not try to just jump off a cliff into the the deep end. I think wading in cautiously into the shallow end and trying to make sure that whatever we do is consistent with all those values that you're talking about is another way to look at it. So potentially pursuing pilot projects or programs with the idea that we're approaching this with some type of a scientific method, and as issues become transparent. They're managed on a scale that's small enough that we can adjust and move ahead and let the thing evolve carefully. So I have more specific ideas on how that could potentially be done, but it's definitely something. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of time, and it is it's a very important issue, and it's a contentious issue, and it's also an intensive issue for staff resources, and sensitive to that. You know, I want to make sure we balance those resources with the process, making sure that we're hearing the public and everything's moving ahead, but we're also not just peeling out and wasting lots of time and money. So,
All right, John?
Okay, so without the cultivation, we don't have the retail, we don't have the manufacturing, so it makes sense to put that ahead of the.
Is that true?
that's not
list.
true.
That's not true, I don't think.
That's not true. We could have dispensaries and not cultivate in the county.
Okay,
It would
so-
have to come from
so
out of county.
It doesn't matter where the cultivation is then. It could be top, bottom, wherever. Okay. But let's get back to what we were supposed to be looking at here, and I'm looking at my agenda, and it has to do with the proposed timelines. We have consensus on number one, that we're going to go ahead and look at all this, right? Everybody's okay on that. So the first thing that has to be decided is the timeline. Is the timeline that we're looking at, is it something that works? Because that's what staff needs to know. They need to plan what's going to happen. So it would seem to me that the first thing that we need to do, if we have decided that we're going to look into this, and these are all the things that we're going to look into, is this timeline accurate? Is it okay? And is it something we need to proceed with?
And I agree, and I think that's the conversation, especially with regards to topics, how they are going to be ranked in discussion. So,
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
However you guys decide, let me tell you the reasons why we chose these. Taxes, obviously, you know why. Stated that. Back to Supervisor Rutherford's point about an elephant. One bite. From our perspective, you can have retail without cultivation. They are and can be interrelated, but they can stand alone. I've seen it, walked it, looked at it. It can stand by itself if you choose to do that. Manufacturing, although it can be integrated, can stand alone. Where they get their product, they will have to follow state regulatory regulations for getting the product, manufacturing, transporting, all those things that the state, we hope, will actually come up with a system for that. So it can stand on its own. The reason why we put retail first is it's a small problem. And one, do you want it or not? And the average is one per about 16,000 residents. City may have one. That's one or two in our county is the problem, the why I see it. It can be more. I'm not saying that is the answer we're recommending. I'm saying that is a typical thought that we have found in checking with our consultants with the typical. So it's a problem. It's a one or two or three issue. Manageable. Manufacturing, to me, I look at it like a manufacturing zone and a company. They're going to go in certain areas. They're going to have restrictions. They're going to have certain things they have to follow. From the building official standpoint, they're going to do X. It's not optional. We would write an ordinance the same exact way. That's why when obviously the buck stops with somebody, that's why I chose this decision. When we get to cultivation, that's going to be the discussion point that, to me, yes, it's going to be the most, the term you use is, it's got the most interest. I agree. It's also going to be the most difficult decisions, I believe. That's my perspective. If I'm wrong, tell me. That is why you asked why. That was the thought process. Doesn't mean it's right. Somebody's got to make the decision. That was why it was put on paper.
Yeah, and David, when you and I spoke, we realized that there's going to be a lot of difficult conversations intermixed with this, but we really looked at it from the standpoint of time. And like you said, a retail discussion will probably be much shorter. I would anticipate it would be shorter than a conversation on cultivation, as an example. Kira?
Just a question. All that being said, do you and perhaps our consultants here feel that we need a whole meeting to make a decision in for these shorter topics? I'm looking at this from the industry timeline. We're already behind as far as getting a jump on 2018. And if we're finishing our cultivation decision meeting in August, then maybe we'll have an ordinance by October, and maybe it's not even, if it goes through, in before the end of the year. So really, we're looking at this plan putting us in 2019. My question is, do you feel, or maybe have you experienced these shorter discussions progressing the conversation at a faster rate than what's laid out here in this chart?
So I just told Neil, we'll both answer that. I'm going to let him answer from his experience in other jurisdictions.
Great.
I've been here a year. I've listened. I think I know my board pretty well. I've listened to the community. There's a reason why I put a whole meeting, Kira. I would not be the one to put forth something that shortchanged that. And if we did it quicker, nothing would make me happier from a resource expenditure standpoint. Nothing would make the folks sitting behind me in the other departments that are all affected by this happier, honestly. But from my perspective, in what we saw in the last meetings and the discussion and the passion around all of these subjects, I believe that we laid out what we'd recommended. And if it's shorter, I'd be happy. I'll let Neil answer from his perspective from other jurisdictions, and I'm assuming we can go faster. That's the board decision, whether they want to do that or not. And I'll let Neil answer about if it's physically possible, because that'll be something I put on him. Anyway, go ahead.
Thank you, David. Actually, we're prepared to move as quickly as you need. We have all the information for all the activities. If it does turn out that it only takes half of a meeting to have the discussion about any of those topics or less, we'll be prepared to move forward with the continued discussion. As David says, we don't know, but certainly we can combine those discussions on retail and manufacturing and even cultivation into whatever time period is appropriate for the county. Again, you know, as your consultants, we really want to do what the county wants to do. We want to reflect the attitude of Tuolumne County. If it's the decision to, you know, have a longer discussion about these things, we're prepared to do that. And if it's a shorter discussion, we're also prepared to do that. We can do it in a shorter, probably, period of time if, in fact, that is the way that the county would like to proceed with it. Or again, I think we're going to see as we get into those discussions how long each of them takes. And I absolutely agree that the retail manufacturing components will probably not take as much time. Cultivation, you're in a cultivating area here. I don't need to tell you that. That's going to be your longest conversation. To us, the important thing really, and I'll say this even though I don't want to get into a lengthy discussion about it, is getting that tax measure on the ballot. We've seen in jurisdictions we're doing tax measures with, in San Luis Obispo, City of Shasta Lake, in the City of Merced, that it's taking 5 to 6 months to get that on the ballot. We saw the City of Davis did their ballot measure 3 years ago before Prop 64 was ever introduced for recreational, so they were in the position to go ahead and move that direction. We don't want this. We've been directed. We don't want to make this cost the county money. But the other activities, we will move as quickly as you want in those discussions to help you with those decisions.
So what do we need what do you need as far as direction or staff need about the tax discussion? Do you just need a simple decision from the board that says, yes, we want to
I wish it was that easy.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I mean, what do you
So,
mean?
if that's your point is, okay, what's the rate? What are you taxing? Because when you do something like that, and we got counsel back here somewhere, as well as Neil, you'll have to decide if you're going to tax the retail product. What is that rate? What are the ramifications? What are the future revenues? Is it a general tax, or is it a specific tax to us, which requires a higher vote threshold? Growth. If you're going to have manufacturing, you have a product, you could have a tax on that. You could have a tax on the cultivation side, canopy size. There's so many different nuances to this that there's discussion points that we'll have the experts telling you what goes on in other jurisdictions. What is the cap? What's the potential revenue? And then where can we use those resources to provide the other quality of life issues that we first put out, and are we able to fund it properly? And so the first point is yes or no, and then the discussions about those is where do you want to look at it, because we don't want to do multiple tax measures. You've got to get it right the first time.
Okay, so simply, we can say, yes, we want to do a tax measure, we can put it on the ballot, and if we choose not to use it later on, we're just fine.
Correct.
Okay.
Jerry?
I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to divide and conquer here. Knowing, with a few exceptions, I'm not sure that the marijuana working group is the best place for us to discuss to have the tax discussion. And therefore, that's something the board feels strongly about and is probably more equipped to deal with. So why wouldn't we just let the board do that and then move everything up a couple months and start down this list? I still would argue for the cultivation first, but I'll go to that later. But move everything up this list a couple of months, because while you're having the tax discussion, we can be talking about the other stuff.
So I'm going to
As long as you're willing to clone me,
Exactly.
and the rest of it,
We have some- we
perfectly
have-
fine.
we have some consultation.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure that's not a good idea, okay? And here's why. You don't need to be involved in the tax discussions. That's not your bailiwick, okay? That should be a county finance committee item under revenue, and that ought to involve our finance committee people, and that ought to come to the board for a decision out of the finance committee. That would take workload off of the committee. And again, I just want to make sure I heard the right answer, and that is, because I think it becomes almost a moot point. If we put a ballot initiative on and it passes, and we don't approve any commercial activity, we're not out anything other than whatever the cost of having an item on the ballot is. So my question is why wouldn't we put a ballot initiative out there? And why wouldn't we just right now direct staff to go start working on that? Not you, but the correct staff for a tax, to just go start working on a ballot initiative. And then if we decide to do something in commercial, then we're covered. And if we don't, we got it if the decision changes in the future.
That would make sense, but what I would like to see is with that finance committee that you do have consultant help through the process.
Supervisor Gray, don't worry, I will give you a very detailed outline of what resources we need, and I think that's a great idea for the finance
I
committee,
absolutely-
regardless whether it's time for me or not. That's the proper
I
route.
concur, that would be an opportunity to streamline, yeah. Scott?
Yeah, I would agree that I don't think the working group needs to be involved in the tax discussion. But I have heard it a couple times during the meeting tonight, just a lack of knowledge on some of the marijuana issues. And I, again, would push very hard for education. There was some discussion on education at the beginning of the meeting. I would assume that the education town hall meetings and all that would take place during some of these discussion dates. And I think we're making it just a little bit more harder than it needs to be. I think if you have some professionals or staff members from the county, local advocates for the marijuana industry come and have a presentation and educate us, or educate the folks talking about the tax discussion. I think it would go a little bit quicker once you have that knowledge, because if you're shooting from the hip on some of these discussions and decisions, you're bound to miss. So I think education is critical on this.
That's not a policeman metaphor, is it? No.
Shooting from the hip.
I think that's a great idea. I'm always trying to outsource my weaknesses so I can focus on what I'm good at, and I'm not good on taxes. I can talk about marijuana taxes and what people have done throughout the state of California, but so can your consultant, and he probably has more current information than I do.
I think there's general consensus that certainly the tax conversation should be going to the Finance Committee. All right.
Can I argue a little more for the cultivation first? Just a little more, and then I'll back off.
All right, Jerry.
The main reason I heard that it was not a good idea was it was hard, right? And I accept that it will be hard. I'm not sure it's harder than manufacturing from my personal point of view, but I accept that it's hard. But we've got a head of steam up now, and dealing with the hard stuff first isn't in my life is you deal with the hard stuff first. The other stuff you'll have time to wrap up later on, but get the hard stuff out of the way. And so I still would argue that the cultivation. The other thing is we sit here with a third of the people in this room that are sitting behind you are here because they want to go figure out a way of making money out of marijuana, right? Plain and simple. Yeah, maybe they think it's a good idea socially and all that other kind of stuff. But if there was no money to be had making it, they probably wouldn't be in this room. And I'm, as a capitalist, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. However, the retail thing's going to make, 5 people money? Yeah, there's not going to be a bazillion retail shops in Sonora, so you're not going to make very many people money on that. Manufacturing, it's going to take a few years to get factories built around here. So the people that are coming and banging on us saying, let's get something done, as Kira keeps saying, opportunity's knocking, Jerry, opportunity's knocking. The people that are saying that, they're saying it about cultivation. So not dealing with that is a problem. Now, I'm not saying it's a good idea, right? But not dealing with it now is and putting it off, I think I don't think that's the right approach. So,
Carl.
Well, I guess I'm not the only one. I tend to agree. First of all, I think if there's a terribly thorny issue, I mean, they're all going to be thorny, but if there's a terribly thorny issue, it is cultivation. And likely it's not. I'm assuming we've kind of made a decision on the tax going to the Finance Committee. Cultivation will eat up the pad that we just put into our program. So I kind of agree to move it up. I still, I think that there's, to me, intellectually, if we're going to do this, I would like to kind of see a measured approach. I don't want to dive off the 30-meter tower into the deep cold water. I want to walk in the wading pool first. And so I think that if we kind of intellectually approach it, that let's not try and find the nth order solution to cultivation. Let's find, if we decide we want to do that, let's decide how we do it in a limited fashion and move to retail, and do that in a limited fashion and move to manufacturing, and look at how we can scale any successes that we find. Okay? So that, because if we try, I just keep looking across the river. If we try to do everything, and I'm not saying we're going to do anything, but if we try to do everything that everybody wants in cultivation, we'll never get to retail and manufacturing because we'll be undoing the stuff that we did in cultivation. We'll be trying to fix problems that we put in place. So we need to go, the first question we need to ask in each one of these is there a way that we can get in at some minimum risk level to the county so that if we need to, we can back out quickly? And if we don't need to, maybe we can grow it over time. But I'm looking, either way, if we say no, that's a success. If we say yes, but I want to get to a decision early. And I think the bigger the problem we try to solve, the longer it's going to take to solve it. Okay? So I'm thinking let's try a little experiment if we want to do that. And I don't know what my fellow board members' emotional position is or intellectual position is on all of this. But if we do, it will be more palatable to me. I'll rephrase that. It will be palatable to me if it is going to be palatable, if it's in some measured fashion.
What I'm hearing is pilot program, perhaps.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, that's a lot more palatable to me. Well, let's put it this way. It's a shorter path to convincing me to do that, okay, than it is to start issuing 300 permits for cultivation in the county. I will tell you, you'll probably spend a long time convincing me of that, okay? Whereas maybe a pilot program or something like that, again, it's an experiment. We can decide it doesn't work. The path to convincing me of that is probably quite a bit shorter, and it has a little bit higher likelihood of success.
I'm all for moving cultivation up. I agree. It's probably the biggest bite out of the elephant that we need to discuss. I am totally for a pilot program if that is what moves this down the road.
Well, and let me just be clear. All of the staff work and all of the consultant work needs to show that a pilot program has a likelihood of working. I'm not saying you bring the pilot program, I'm going to okay it, but I'm just saying let's take a look at all the pros and the cons, just like I said, and then let's take baby steps. And if we find successes, we build on the successes. Okay.
Neil, do you know if there's pilot programs in other areas, cities?
I'm not aware of anything called necessarily a pilot program other than for the stamp tax that was done up in Humboldt that didn't affect cultivation. However, we see a limit of 141 permits in San Luis Obispo County, for instance, and it could be termed a pilot program if you do some kind of a limit. And whether you do a limit on the acreage that you're allowing or whether you do a limit on the number of permits you're allowing, I think you can achieve the goal that Supervisor Rotifer is talking about, as opposed to just opening the entire thing up.
I'm just simply, so everybody knows, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm trying to find a way that we can get to a decision in a reasonable amount of time. The smaller piece of this elephant that you work with, the more likely it is that you're going to get to a decision.
I think I don't disagree with any of that. I think that it's when I was saying there's a lot of people out there wanting to make money off of this, telling them no now is a lot better than waiting 3 years and telling them no, or a year and telling them no, because then they can decide another way to go about it, right?
We
And
have
go
waited
after-
3 years.
Yeah. So it's a lot better to say no now,
Well-
if
Yes.
that's the case. And you can say no in a small way, a lot easier than if we say, yes in a big way. So I think that's consistent with that, is saying,
But I think we've said no. I mean, that's the answer right now in the county is no, okay? But we did that consciously to give us time to digest the pros and the cons. Again, I have my own, I'll call it political or personal or whatever, biases, okay? And most people can probably figure out what those are if they know me. But by the same token, I think that the state has determined that they're going down this road, and we owe it a fair evaluation. Because honestly, if we stay no, we will feel very real consequences. We will have impacts, and we will have no additional resources to deal with those impacts. That's reality. So the question is, what is the best answer? And so that's what this whole dialogue is about, is how do we maximize or optimize our county's ability to deal with impacts that are going to come regardless of what we make as a decision. And so I want to, again, I'm trying to shape this discussion so that we can get to another decision, if we choose to have another decision, and keep moving in a way that is, if we end up making a boo-boo, it's a small boo-boo, and we can recover from it, okay? So, anyway, and build on success, so.
Okay, so getting back to, again.
What we're going to look at that calendar, and what I'd like to do is take a 15-minute break. I'm going to talk to David. I've heard a few things here, and then we do need to go to public comment. But that the tax discussion will go to the Finance Committee. We will look at moving cultivation up as a top item. And then also I heard looking at a calendar for education, the education component. And the outreach.
We can probably give you some answers. We've already discussed these, so we'll give us a little bit of time to talk, and we'll talk.
So let's take a 15-minute break.
Great, thank you.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to go to staff comments on what has been proposed. Sure.
Thank you. I appreciate you putting us versus public comment.
Elevated above that, Sheriff.
Thank you. I do want to say a few things. I can appreciate the comment and the discussion about the taxation, but I think that's going to, in my opinion, it's going to be a kind of a moot point, because the fact of the matter is that the public is going to look at that as, okay, it's revenue, but we haven't given the public something really to vote on, because in the sense of, are we going to allow cultivation? Are we going to allow commercialization? The public will have an expectation that something's going to happen. If I'm going to vote on something, I want to see that the revenue comes in, okay? And I'm here to tell you that Supervisor Royce or the other supervisors that talk about a pilot, Supervisor Rutherford, want a pilot program, you don't have to go very far to look at what a pilot program does or doesn't do. In the state of Colorado, 40% of the counties allow marijuana cultivation, sales, and growing and manufacturing. Thank you. Every single DA in that state, in those counties, has said that crime, not your marijuana crime, because there is no longer possession for sales, no longer is there possession of marijuana, no longer is there the transportation, because those are all mute. They're gone. And in California, because of the propositions, those things are mute here in California. So when I'm talking about the crime has increased, I'm talking about the homicides. I'm talking about the violent crimes of robbery. I'm talking about the home invasions. Those crimes, every single district attorney in the state that in Colorado that has where marijuana is being either grown, manufactured, or sold there commercially, all of them are on record to say that crime has increased. So now we're talking about, is it a quality of life? Well, I'm here to tell you it is a quality of life. Well, I wrote down here, at what price? Well, my question to you is, at what price are we willing, and what risk are we willing to look at? So I will fight on this. I will fight on everything about cultivation, about any of that commercialization. I will fight you. And I don't mean you, but I will fight this topic. I am the sheriff. I stand with the district attorney. We stand together, and this is one hill, because she had to leave for another function. This is one hill that we will die on. This is not for Tuolumne County. Do you have any questions? Because I'm sorry, I'm pretty passionate. It's the Italian part of me. I apologize.
What is your position?
I don't apologize for my Italian heritage, but that's just the way that I am.
What is your position again? Could you clarify?
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Are there any other staff that we need to hear from? All right. At this time, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Mr. Pedro, can you set it for 2 minutes, please?
Good evening. My name is Cindy Simonson, and I am the president of the Tuolumne County Board of Education. I bring to you tonight a resolution that our board passed unanimously last night. The resolution reads in part, whereas the Tuolumne County Board of Education's main focus is to ensure the safety, security, and well-being of all Tuolumne County students, and whereas our concerns are reflected in the longitudinal studies, one from the American Academy of Pediatrics, linking marijuana's negative effect on the intellectual function, higher rates of mental health disorders including addiction, depression, anxiety, psychosis, paranoia, schizophrenia, respiratory illness, asthma, and immune system suppression. And whereas in a report by the California Department of Public Health, frequent users demonstrated a decrease in IQ, impaired school performance with 60% less likely to graduate from high school and 60% less likely to graduate from college. And whereas studies also indicate marijuana accounting for most youth drug treatment admissions. The resolution also includes sections agreeing with County Document Chapter 17.67. The Tuolumne County Board of Education respectfully requests that the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors consider implementing the most restrictive guidelines for outdoor cannabis grows or the complete banning of outdoor cannabis grows. And that before any permit is issued, if that should happen, a local tax is developed to provide revenue to be set aside annually for Tuolumne County Superintendent of Schools to use to fund counseling and education required to address the potential increase of cannabis use by the students that may arise because of the pending regulation of cannabis distribution, production, and sales in Tuolumne County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for a moment of your time. My name is Ben Howell, and I am the principal of Sonora High School, and a proud member of this county, and a proud servant of our children, and a lot of our other community members. As we have begun to see a dramatic extreme increase of marijuana in the schools, and I mean extreme increase. Today alone, we suspended 4 students for possession. Yesterday, 3 students for possession. Just this week, 7 students. An almost, I don't want to give a number, but I would say an extreme increase in the instances just this year. I would caution that if we're going to go towards a system that's more permissible, that's going to afford our children more access and more availability and more opportunity to get these substances, that we are in the schools fighting hard to tell them is wrong. It's not going to lead to a healthy and productive life. We are sending them a very clear mixed message. And mixed messages are horrible for us as educators because weeding through that moral dilemma with students doesn't fall anywhere for them. So I encourage you to look very closely at how this will impact not only the revenue that may be generated now, but the revenue that's going to be needed to help these students 25, 30 years from now as they are standing before us then and leading us then, because the impact then I think will be far, far, far greater than the decisions that are made right now. And for our students that we are fighting hard for, to make sure that they have a future, that they have a direction, that they are motivated to move towards something where they can be sustainable and gainful for our community and be willing to be vested here in the long term, is so extremely important. And so I would recommend and encourage you to make sure that all the decisions that are made really fall in line with that, and remembering their children, they need to have decisions that are going to support them. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Margie Bulkin. I'm the County Superintendent of Schools, and I'm going to die on the vine with the sheriff and the district attorney. I'll come to the mic every time to share with you a new soundbite. I want to follow up on my comment from last time where I indicated that there are 50 schools that are operated as private education centers in Tuolumne County outside of the recognized schools in Tuolumne County. I communicated with David Gonzalez. We talked about providing addresses to give you an impression of the breadth of education that takes place in the community. And I'm unable, as per the privacy rights from the state of California, to provide you with those addresses, which I talked to you about. And I regret that I'm not able to do that, because it's impressive to note that 350 students are out in the community every single day to achieve their education. And any proximity to the growth or cultivation of marijuana, it would be a risk to their safety. I am for a complete ban on any ordinance for any private grow or cultivation in our county. And as an additional anecdote, you may know that I work with recruits to this county and in finding people to work here. One of the top 10 questions is, has the county adopted an ordinance yet about the cultivation of marijuana? I may reconsider moving here should you do that. So please, I urge you to take the recommendation number 1 here and not even address this issue and stick with a complete ban on the outdoor grow. Thank you.
My name is Adam Fries. I'm the unit forester for Tuolumne Calaveras unit of CAL FIRE. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to comment. I know I've commented in the past on the impacts commercial cultivation has had to our resource management staff as we enforce forced practice rules, and specifically in Calaveras County, tied to commercial cultivation, and then also the increased fires that have been tied to cultivation in Calaveras County over the last 2 years. Over that same time period in Tuolumne County, we haven't had the problem, so I just urge you guys to consider that. And then with the community outreach on the agenda here, page 2, it talks about stakeholders having the opportunity to provide concerns and expertise to the county. I appreciate CAL FIRE being a part of that process as you guys move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Bob Kirk. I live in Mewick Village. I just wanted to sort of review that marijuana is a gateway drug, in spite of what anybody may say. I've been very concerned about how public policy is being set on this topic. Go back to the Colorado studies that has a chart that shows that since they've released marijuana for recreational use, that the opioid-related deaths have declined. And in the last meeting, I showed a chart that showed that that, in fact, was erroneous conclusion that the deaths have increased. Well, since our last meeting, I did a little more research and discovered that the 2016 data has been released that shows that the deaths related to opioid use have continued to actually increase. In the 3 years since marijuana has been allowed recreationally, the total number of people that have died each year has been greater than any year prior to the use of recreational marijuana. So marijuana is, in fact, not helping to save lives. And I'm here because I'm very concerned about my grandchildren. Proud to say that I have 6, and I'm concerned that each one of them grows up in a community with great quality of life and is not induced into the use of marijuana. And I think I would just like to ask the board to just say no. Thank you.
I'm David Peters, a retired social worker. I noticed in the minutes here from the special meeting last month that the Marijuana Working Committee had recommended that stakeholders be involved in finding out how they're going to respond to this and how it's going to affect the stakeholders. The stakeholders that they wanted to invite were social workers, representatives from schools, representatives from law enforcement, California Highway Patrol, Sheriff's Office, California Department of Fish and Game, CAL FIRE, cultivators, sorry about that one, Chamber of Commerce, Tuolumne County Business Council, and Association of Realtors. All of those people at the last meeting, except the cultivators, I believe, gave testimony against going on with commercial marijuana. But it seems to be rolling along like an unstoppable juggernaut. And the assumption being that it's going to happen, especially if we say, okay, we want to tax this, we put it on the ballot for June. The assumption of the public is that it's already been passed and legal, therefore, yes, we want to tax it. And I tell you, if that came up, I would say, yes, I want to tax it because I want to make them pay for what they're going to cause in this county. But the assumption of the public, if it goes on the ballot, is that it's okay, folks. Now, it's going to happen. Do you want to tax it? Of course they're going to want to tax it. Really, I mean, I'm sorry, but it's like this is getting ridiculous. I mean, people have spoken, and I'll tell you, this is a small representation of what you're going to hear if this continues on without any consideration from public input. I mean, we need to be consider the people who are dealing with our children and with the consequences of what are going to happen. We can't ignore them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Charles Kimmel. I've been a resident of Tuolumne County since the early 60s. And as much as I appreciate the entrepreneurial spirit of a lot of you guys out there that have a vested interest in this or the additional tax revenues, I just want to share that in 1967 as a high school student here, I had less than 2 grams of marijuana with me in my coat pocket as I came to school. I forgot it was even there. The sheriff's department was there. By the end of the day, I was arrested. I spent 2 days in jail. So how far we've come in the wrong direction since that day just amazes me that we're sitting here talking about cultivating and growing a product that I had a lot of exposure to, in that
Sir, could you talk into the microphone?
That I had a lot of exposure to in that Haight-Ashbury hippies area. That product is for getting high, for getting loaded, and it's not going to benefit anybody besides the ones that grow it, like the school teachers and the administrators have shared. It's difficult for children. It's a mixed message. And all it is another temptation to downgrade our society. If you want to look at an illustration, when we started getting more and more involved in sex education. The more sex education that we taught in the schools and brought, the more sexual promiscuity took place. And we're doing the same thing here with marijuana if we continue down this road. I think that you should say no now. Don't lead these people on, just say no.
Sally Miller, Lake Don Pedro, Tuolumne County. In your future decisions, studies say that there are more raised red flags than positive info about what marijuana will do to our way of life. Our mission statement states quality of life. Do we really know what commercial marijuana will do to our county and its natural resources? We do not. If you listen to the marijuana people who attend these meetings, marijuana will cure everything. Not true. If commercial marijuana is approved in all aspects in our county, we will be going down a dark path to uncertainty. Crime, health issues, addiction, harm to the brains of young children, not to mention the smell that can range from skunk-like to mold, smelly feet, fertilizer, and fecal odors. I know you would not like to sit on your deck or porch and smell that. Neither would the people of this county. Drug violations in young school children in Colorado have increased by 45% and 71% for high school aged children. Children are the future of our county, and we must stand up to protect them. I believe as officials you know what this will do to our county, so please protect our residents, especially our children, our law enforcement, our fire department personnel, and the many businesses who will be affected in the wrong way by commercial marijuana. Fresno County, the cities of Turlock, Houston, Waterford, and Newman have banned commercial marijuana completely. Marin County decided to allow medical marijuana delivery services only in their county. Calaveras County, I believe, is going to be voting on this very shortly, and in the newspaper did say they were leaning towards a ban. Let's stand with these towns and these counties and join them in banning commercial marijuana. Keep Tuolumne County safe and beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. T.Y. Atkins, Tuolumne. In all due respect to the position and the decision making that each of you have to make from day to day regarding the well-being of our county, I'm standing in line and I'm listening to the conversation, and it baffles my mind that we're even having this discussion. It really does. I mean, why are we thinking of even bringing an industry into our county that has such a history of destroying lives and leading into a lifestyle of destruction? I just have trouble making sense of it. I'm grateful that the decision-making has been given to local authorities to make a decision on what should we do with this as a county, as a people. I recommend that you expedite the timeline. As much as I appreciate the work that the task force has done, you can expedite the timeline and just make a proposal to simply say, Tuolumne County says no to the entire commercial marijuana industry, period. And we're done with it. Why don't we continue to let Tuolumne County be the great place it is, to raise kids, to vacation, to retire, to raise grandkids. Let it continue to enjoy the minimal crime, public safety, healthy quality of life that it's known for. If we want to increase tax revenue and employment, let's do that because Tuolumne County is a great place to visit and an awesome place to live. Because these are the things that are our greatest asset. Let's not lose them by making foolish mistakes. Thank you.
Bill Boyd, Sonora, California. I thought I'd bring a voice from the other side. I wanted to address a couple things I've heard. One, that marijuana leads, well, that it affects lowers your IQ, makes you, not a contributing member of society, perhaps. Maybe that's going a little too far. I've smoked marijuana since I was 16. I'm 63 now. I went on to get a bachelor's in physics, a master's in electrical engineering. I had a career at University of California, San Diego. In fact, I still work there part-time as a retiree. So as a lifelong user of marijuana, I think that I've had a very successful career. I don't think it's affected me. I don't get high at work, obviously. I don't drink alcohol at work either. I don't see we already have cannabis in this county. If you don't legalize it commercially, it's going to still happen. There will be no taxes. There will be less money to enforce the regulations that could be brought together by this group. You don't like the smell of it. I don't like the smell of cigarettes. We restrict where one can smoke. We can restrict that. There are ways to get around things, but I think just turning a blind eye and saying, well, it's legal in the state, but we're not going to allow any of it here is just going to make people travel, waste fuel, have little, this is a opportunity for gainful employment for many people in this county, and that's a much needed thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for letting me speak. My name is Jeff Muzio. I wanted to come up and speak on the cannabis community's behalf. I want to first say I really sympathize with the non-cannabis community. This is scary. There's been a lot of misconceptions over the years. There's a lot of false studies even the government has put out, and it's really hard to see past some of that nonsense. And I just want to say first, I see you guys and I see your argument. Some of the arguments I like to break down, though, the IQ, lowering, have a couple names to read off. Bush 1 and 2, Barack Obama, Clinton, Steve Jobs, Michael Phelps, Usain Bolt, Martha Stewart, all people that have used cannabis. Didn't seem to affect them much. These are studies that were done once on monkeys way back in the day, and the way they established that is by asphyxiating those monkeys with cannabis smoke, and their intelligence went down. Look it up. It's actually really a bad study, and to repeat that is kind of nonsense. The school regulations. My grandfather was the superintendent of schools in the Modesto school system. I am very sympathetic to that. My wife has a degree in school studies as well, and whatever. I'm not even sure what she does, but she works with kids, younger kids, 2 through 5 years old right now, and so I'm very sympathetic to that. The need to keep that away from schools is very good. The way to do that is regulation. If everybody in here remembers when they were kids, the best way to get alcohol was shoulder taps. How's that working out nowadays? That's because of regulation, not because it's in the stores. Opioid use is up because of, obviously, prescription use was up. They're starting to cut that back. Guaranteed opioid use gets back. Most of all, what this issue really comes down to me is this society here is a conservative society in Tuolumne County. We have to base our decisions on what's good for freedom and what your rights are. Whose right is it to tell me what I can do on my property? Are other businesses in danger? Are we now going to start going around claiming that there's health and safety issues everywhere, and we're just going to shut down different industries because of it? We have to hold those conservative values, and we have to make sure we're not infringing on other people's rights. Thank you very much.
First off, I'm not much of a public speaker. My name's Tyler. I'm from Don Pedro, California. I agree with different parts of what everybody said on both sides of it, but if it's not mandated, it's not going to solve the problem. So there has to be some type of mandation on it because, for instance, if it's getting into schools, that's because it's so freely and loose right now. If it's not mandated and you cannot go to a store and purchase it, it's just laying around people's houses because people are maybe neglecting the fact of how serious the issue is. So unless there's a mandation put into point, then I don't think it's ever going to decrease children wanting to experiment, because as a child I did not smoke marijuana. I took Adderall that was prescribed to me as a kid, and I wish that on the other hand I would have been handed maybe CBD or a THC pill. I think that would have done me a lot more beneficial as an adult now. I am a productive part of the society. I own a company. I'm a swimming pool contractor. I pay taxes, and I think that it would be a great thing for the county and for the people of the county if there was a mandation and you can put something into place that's going to keep it out of kids' hands and make it what it's supposed to be, beneficial for people that struggle with specific disorders. And, you know, even as on a recreational standpoint, the same thing as alcohol. People are going to use it and consume it, whether this county says you can or you can't.
Good evening. I'm Lauren Hurley, county resident and cannabis farmer and advocate. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today in regards to cannabis. In regards to the proposed agenda, I must say that I find it a bit backwards. A much more reasonable and practical place to start would be with cultivation, as a couple people have suggested. So perhaps flipping the agenda and starting with cultivation and ending with the other components. This would give more time for those wishing to hold cultivation permits in the county to either prepare for the permitting process or to look elsewhere for an alternative location in either county, depending on your decisions. In regards to the fear about cultivations, I suggest starting a small and tightly regulated pilot program to test the waters rather than making your choices based on fear-based possible outcome. I suggest for all involved a shorter timeline would be suggested. While I can appreciate the time you've all needed to make informed and intelligent decisions, I also believe that you have had ample time to watch and see what's happening in other counties and do your own research while taking this slow. I don't know how closely you're watching any of the other municipalities, but in the last month, Sebastopol has decided to implement an urgency ordinance to allow cultivation and cannabis business while they craft their permanent plan. San Mateo County has, in fact, decided to not add on any additional taxes because they see that the state has already added on quite a few. Anyway, I'm not suggesting you follow their lead, but these are some examples of what can happen when the approach is no longer about if, but when. We need to remember that in all of this, it's all temporary and can be changed whenever you decide it's necessary. That's the beauty of an annual permit or license. You county leaders are in charge. I highly suggest that the county very soon open an intent to apply process that will give a gauge as to how many and what type licenses hope to do businesses here. Then you can take a look at that list, see what it looks like. You can charge a small non-refundable fee. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve. And I'm from Groveland, and I want to say I grew up on a farm. We grew food, okay, and that's all I've ever grown, okay, real food. And we had very rich soil where I grew up in the Salinas Valley area, and I moved up here, and I couldn't grow anything, okay? And I've studied since then the most intensive permaculture techniques I possibly can, and I can grow stuff now, but it takes a heck of an effort. And what I'm trying to get across to you now is that when commercial cannabis comes of age in California, it's not going to be up here. There are millions of acres of better places to grow marijuana in California, and they're going to squeeze out commercial growing in this poor soil area. There's better climates and better soils. So if you put all this effort into legalizing commercial grows, I'm talking about commercial grows. I voted for legalization of marijuana in California, and I'm not a user, never have been, never will be. But we need to, you're going to put a lot of effort, spend a bunch of our taxpayers' money, not collect enough revenue, and there's not going to be any really big commercial growing going on in this county anyways. And as far as the benefits go, one I've noticed makes guys grow boobs, and it might be good for lingerie sales. That's about it.
Hello, my name is Sean Robinson. I live in Jamestown. I just wanted to bring attention that there's a young girl, 12 years old, Alexis Portela, that is suing the federal government because it is the right thing to do because she can get her medication. She's been 2.5 years free of seizures. She called them seizure monsters. Look her up, and the story it's a true story. There's a lot more benefit with this product than there is negative. And people have to look at the medical benefits that comes with cultivation and product. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Richard King, and I'm a 3-time cancer survivor. And my niece passed away from cancer, and I kept her alive for 2.5 years, past the time that they said that she would live till. And for everybody that says it's a gateway drug, I'm here to say that I get hundreds of people off of OxyContin, Vicodin, and all kinds of prescription drugs all the time. So for the people that think it's a gateway drug, I just want to let everybody know that's not the case.
All right. See no other public comment, so I'm going to close the public comment, bring it back to the board. And Supervisor Royce, I think, did you have a comment that you wanted to make, or?
Sure. So, this is a tough subject. It's very tough, and you can see there's a lot of emotion and passion in this room. And I understand that. I feel the same emotion and passion. I first got involved in local government because I had a passion to defend people's liberties and rights, and I wanted Tuolumne County to be a place where people can be prosperous. They can have the ability to be innovative, creative, and ambitious, and I believe very, very strongly in property rights. My worldview has always been that way. I've always looked at myself as a conservative person, and I think those are conservative values. And I think a lot of the comments that I've heard tonight from people that are opposed to this violate those beliefs and principles of mine. Although on a lot of other things, I feel I'm perfectly in line with their political worldviews. I think fundamentally, for humans to be happy, they have to be free and independent and have liberty. And I never want to feel like I've ever imposed upon anybody's liberty in that way. And there are valid concerns that people have. That doesn't mean anybody can do whatever they want. I subscribe to the golden rule. I think as adults, that's how a good person should conduct themselves, and I think that's what we should teach children, is to do unto others as you want them to do unto you. And I believe that we should continue to look at this thing the way that we have. I think this board has been extremely responsible, and I think we've been doing our due diligence. I think we've pursued this in a reasonable, fair manner, and I do not want to see this become a polarized thing, but I think there's no choice. That's just the way it is. I smoked marijuana when I was a kid. I ate a pot brownie last night before I went to bed. Occasionally I do that, and it helps me. I work almost 80 hours a week. I run a company that's got 20 to 30 employees that provide for their families, and I work harder than anyone I've ever done. I can see myself having a nervous breakdown from time to time, but I push hard because I want to serve my community. I want to be successful. I want to be a good family member. I try so hard to be a good person, and I know lots of people like me. It's not something you want to be honest about and confess in front of everybody, because you can be scrutinized. If people here would look at me and think that's a bad thing, my own grandma's probably going to be very upset with me. But I think honesty is a good thing. And I also, since I've been a kid, I've drank alcohol. I think that's much more destructive. And I like to do that instead to unwind, shut my mind off, because in the middle of the night when everybody else is sleeping and I'm still working, it calms me down. And there are people here who are trying to pursue this as a business venture. And, you know, that's one thing. I don't think it's the most important thing and the most important consideration we have as a board. In this role, it's our job to protect our community. And I want to do that 100%. But doing that doesn't mean just shutting down something because you're scared of it. It's no different than logging or mining or development or anything like that. People that want to do take a risk, pursue a venture, should be able to do that if they're not hurting anybody. And there's lots of ways that this can be done that doesn't hurt people. There are definitely concerns about putting it in the hands of children. I agree completely. But banning it will not take it out of the hands of children. Banning it will put power and economic advantage in the hands of people who break our laws, for people who violate regulations, who do things in the black market behind closed doors, and they're not afraid to sell it to children. They're not afraid to do something that's bad like that. The comment about shoulder tapping. When I was in high school, I tried to get beer, and I could never get beer because people wouldn't buy it for me. A store wouldn't sell it to me because they would lose their license and their economic ability to conduct business in a regulated, legal way. And we're in a gray area right now. I don't think marijuana it's not the most important thing in the world. It's not what it shouldn't be our identity. It's a small little thing that people use recreationally or medically or whatever, and they should have the ability to put in their bodies what they choose. If they're not hurting anybody, they should not drive. They should not go to work that way. They should not. There's a whole bunch of things that have to be regulated. You don't give it to kids. Giving it to kids should be illegal, and that's the bad thing. Growing it is not the bad thing. We can take, if we regulate it the right way, you can take it to a place where less children would have it in their possession. You have to do that in a logical, analytical, intelligent way, not an emotional, reactive way. And just ignoring it is just going to, it's going to kick the can down the road. It's going to be the same problem. And I'm getting people telling me all kinds of things about, I have to campaign again here pretty soon. And I'm going to be running for re-election. I'm sure this speech right here will be used against me, and I don't give a damn, because I believe honesty is more important. I believe ethics, values, all those things are way more important than just the political pressure we feel and just succumbing to those. And I do not want to see this be dictated by bullying or pressure. Jim Mealy, I love you. We used to go to the gym, go to the track, run together. He's a great man. And I disagree with you. I want to help you make our community stronger, safer, better. But I think we can regulate it. And for all the people that are opposed to this, I would implore with you to educate yourself and be fair and logical in the way you pursue this. I also don't want the people in the industry to say that this is the solution to all our problems, because it's not. Our solution is to be intelligent and take this slowly and maturely, and don't lose sight of our values and what we're trying to achieve, and that is quality of life, that's health and safety, and it's also having a local government that is responsible and serves our citizens, and that takes time and resources, and we deal with the nitty-gritty in that every week. We're up here talking about our budgets and those things, and I can tell you, just banning it is going to put a constraint on their resources. Just opening up the floodgates will do the same exact thing. There's a balanced middle ground that has to be struck here, and it will take time. We're not going to rush. I do not think that we should try to expedite this for the sake of people in the industry, because then we would compromise our ability to do a good job. But I also don't want to succumb to fear-mongering and say it's going to make everybody idiots and lower our IQs and all that either. It's that we have to take our time, and I truly believe that we need to pursue this cautiously and intelligently. And I like the idea, I think Jerry's approaches, I like sending the tax measure to the Finance Committee, because that's what they do, and that's a way to delegate and divide the workload so that we can handle this, and that would help David. He's got an enormous job on his plate. Not only are we dealing with this, we have general plan updates, we have a number of important issues on our agenda for this year. Cultivation is a big contentious part, and I think that's because there are a lot of unknowns. And the pilot project idea I like, because I think that there is the ability to flush out some of the issues and keep it within a constrained area, a constrained project that the county can control. And that's what it comes down to, regulating and controlling. We don't know what it's going to take to do that. We don't have the answer on the dollars down to the nitty-gritty of what it will take to regulate, enforce, abate violators. And what I want to do, I've been kicking this around for a while. I've talked to people in our staff and our county about this. My idea, I don't want to just say we should have an ordinance and start, anybody that complies with the zoning gets to do it, because then it just goes out into the different areas, and it's harder to have an understanding of what it's fragmented. What I want to do is I want a pilot program at the Jamestown mine site that the county owns, that's been a thorn in our side for decades. And there are a lot of obstacles and legal questions that would need to be answered to know if that's even a viable solution. And maybe that's not the site. But I like that site because I think it would make it worth more money, which is good for the taxpayers and the county. And I think it's a confined location which would be suitable to do a science experiment and say, okay, the people who put their face up here at this dais that are trying to participate, that want to be legal, law-abiding, tax-paying cannabis businesses, I think should be participants in that. And I think potential developers, people could compete in a proposal process to maybe be the intermediary or intermediate party for us. And I don't want to get too far into the details of that because I think there's so many questions. But all I'm saying is I think we need to be smart and fair, and I think if we do anything, it just needs to be within an area that we can control, and we can learn about it more, and if it's successful, we can scale outward. And if it's not successful, we can eliminate it. And we can change and we can adjust, and we have those parameters. And I think that's a smart way to pursue it, not an emotional way. And I let the board think about that. I think staff would, basically, staff needs direction from us if they're going to invest resources in that. And I think we're asking the questions is something we can even do.
So I want to recap a couple of things that I think I've heard, and let's see if we have some consensus to provide to staff. And I want to reiterate, from my perspective, this does not mean that we are giving the green light to any activity. It means that we are exploring what a particular option would mean.
Before you recap, can I just add another thought? And it's one that I wanted to talk about earlier, but it just didn't fit with the dialogue. We did some things, in my mind, there's a difference between the medical use of marijuana and the adult use of marijuana. And we did some things when we, at our last meeting, that have the potential to limit the ability of certain people in certain circumstances in the medical arena, specifically caregivers that are currently growing for multiple patients, but there's probably some other population groups that are. I think that one of the things that we ought to be considering is a solution somewhere along the lines that provides some alternative solution to those people. Because while I sort of viscerally agree with a lot of the discussion about the ills of recreational use, I also recognize that there is some, no, it doesn't cure anything, but it does mitigate pain. It keeps people off of opioids. That's their only other alternative to deal with the pain. So there are some social advantages to the medical use of marijuana if it's not abused. So I have some concerns there. So as we do this, and what I'm thinking of as two possible solutions that I'd like to offer out there may be other ones, but I'd like staff to be kind of looking to kind of dovetail them in at the appropriate place, and maybe up front isn't the right place. But one of them would be some kind, and it may go to some place like the mine, but have some kind of a cooperative facility so that people that can't grow at home anymore because they don't want to have they can't afford the expense of doing it indoors, and we won't let them do it outdoors. I'm thinking of, if you've ever lived in the big city, and I have, there's a lot of cooperative gardens where somebody owns a big plot of land and they lease out subplots to various people for them to grow their vegetables. So you could have some similar kind of a situation that was very well controlled, very well secured, and all of that stuff, specific to medical, not adult use, but specific to medical. And the other one is specific to medical, whether we might consider a retail facility so that they don't have to leave the county to buy products. And again, specific to medical. Most of those people are not using the products that are based, or a lot of the people, I won't say most, a lot of the people are not using products that are based on the, I'll call it mind-altering aspects of marijuana. They're using cannabinoid products that are specific to pain mitigation. So those are two. I am concerned that by trying to merge medical and adult use, that we've possibly put some people in a difficult situation that have a legitimate personal need. I won't say need, but a legitimate personal use for medical. Just something to think about.
Anyone else?
I want to get back to the recommendations that we were supposed to
All right, then
be
I will
on, and I'll
recap
let you
where-
lead that.
Okay. Supervisor Hanfield, anything else?
Madam Chair, look, this personal grow stuff, we've already dealt with that, and we haven't finalized it. We've already talked about that. We're talking commercial. And I share the concerns of the school people about the kids. I've said that hundreds of times. I believe it has a huge negative impact on kids using it and the availability, and that bothers me a lot. Unless we solve that problem, I'm going to be a tough candidate here on this thing. And I'm concerned about the cost of this thing. I'm not sure that we can cover the costs of this thing with taxes. And I say that because at CSAC just a couple weeks ago, one of the discussions that I had with some people is that at some level you tax it and it stays underground or goes back underground and it doesn't do things. I believe there's cost to this right now, and we're not covering those, and it concerns me. So I'm willing to go through the process that we have outlined here today to see if we can figure it out, but I'm not willing to step beyond a point where we can't step back. This has got to be done in prudence if it's going to be done at all. And so I'm willing to go through the process. I have my biases. I have lots of questions and lots of concerns. And that's why I keep talking about the upside risk. I believe there's more upside risk than there's downside.
And I think that you speak for all 5 board members, and we've all articulated those concerns. So I want to start with number 2, and we are going to take the tax conversation to the Finance Committee, and our consultant will be assisting us. And then I would also like to include, I heard the sheriff spoke into that, and county schools, and so I'd like to make sure that they are both on the contact list so that they can participate in the conversation also. And again, those are public meetings, so they will be noticed for the public to attend also. Moving on, if we could go back to the timetable that you had up. I heard discussion for moving the cultivation conversation up, but also giving direction to explore a pilot project included in that.
Madam Chair, related to all the subjects or specifically just cultivation? So in other words, are you looking for options in pilot projects? And really, that's just limiting the number and size, really. In all those areas, retail, cultivation, and manufacturing, is that what you're asking? I just want to clarify with everything.
Yeah, and I heard Supervisor Royce say something different. It's not just limiting the number and size, but it's also location. And
Understood.
Trying to move away from a fragmented cultivation scenario.
Okay.
If we're going to give our sheriff a problem, we need to make it as easy a problem as possible.
Understood.
And then following that would be a conversation on retail and then manufacturing. And we may see Supervisor Rotifer, I think, would like to see the retail piece moved up, but we're going to have to follow your lead on what the capacity is for the team. Again, I agree with earlier comments that if we move cultivation up, it will consume more time than 2 meetings.
May I?
Yes.
Okay. I've thought through that, and what I'd request of the board is to get direction to staff to come work with the CAO's office, bring an agenda item before the board, outlining the direction given tonight, and we'll outline that separately when we're done, and come back with the resources we're going to need to make the timelines, the reality for the decisions to happen. And that'll include SCI. They are experts in this area for the taxation side. You will need their expertise, and I think you've heard that already. We obviously didn't have that. We've already spoken about this briefly, and I'm also considering having them working on the ordinances for the personal side. So
for
come back to you with
clarification,
that.
are we going outside of what we have contracted currently then?
Yes, we'll need to do an amendment. That's basically what I'm saying. And then the resources for myself, I need to think through this clearly and make sure I tell you what I'm going to need to make sure this happens for you. And then we'll make the decision at that point as a board. And that's a board decision, I'm assuming.
That would be a board decision. And then the other piece associated would be a calendar to start doing some education, because I
Understood.
think that needs to be running simultaneously in some fashion.
We've thought through these areas. We can do this fairly quickly.
So I'm going to look down the dais both directions for consensus. Right, we have clear direction on that.
So let me summarize and make sure I have this correctly. We're going to allowing the Finance Committee to be moving forward on the taxation independently with our support from likely our consultant. I'll bring that as a separate action to the board. We will be moving cultivation up into the timeline of early part of the year. I'm not going to commit to January. That's awful quick, and there's a lot of people that enjoy their holidays, including myself. So we will do our best to bring that back as quickly as possible. In that, we will have, I think the best way to do this is pilot among all those categories. Obviously, each discussion will have those options and opportunities before you, but I think that'll be the simplest way to have some consistency for you and the public to understand. And that may change, but that's in my mind right now, Madam Chair and Board. We will ensure we have some educational and outreach component to that. We'll likely tie some meetings where I can use multiple resources for the same thing, tying a meeting of this such to an outreach prior to that. The stakeholders will all be involved. I think we have them all covered. If there's not, we will make sure we include those, but I think we included most of these already. Board of Realtors, Sheriff, DA, educational, the business owners, cultivation. I think we have all the pretty lengthy list. We'll likely do some outreach. The public is separate from the stakeholders. It's a different focus. And at the end of this, it'll look like reconciliation will be at the end of all of this. And so we'll lay that out.
Possibly.
Well, regardless of the decisions, we'll
Because
bring
we're not
back and put
saying
that at
yes
the
at
end,
this
however
point.
you end up with it. That's the way I see this. If I've missed the mark, let me know.
Believe we have consensus on that? All right. I want to thank everyone for participating. This is an incredibly important conversation for our county. And again, I want to emphasize that we are looking at exploring what is the best way to manage and minimize any impact. So with that, I do need to have a quick, the working group, we have to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Have you had an opportunity to read them? Are there any
I move
additions?
to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
I have a motion from Kira, a second from Jerry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.